Hey everyone, I'm Peter Stories here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get cozy, and let yourself relax. My name is Ryan Blackwood, and at 6:47 a.m. on October 23, 2019, my radio crackled with the call that would shatter everything I thought I knew about the Great Smoky Mountains. I'd been a ranger for exactly 8 months, still eager to prove myself worthy of the badge, still learning the difference between confidence and competence. That morning, I was about to learn the difference between natural dangers and something far older, far hungrier. Unit 47, this is dispatch. We have a code yellow missing hiker in Sector 12. Last seen at Alum Cave Trail approximately 1900 hours yesterday. Families en route to station. How copy? Unit 47, copy. Missing person, Sector 12, Alum Cave. ETA 10 minutes. My voice carried more certainty than I felt. 8 months on the job, and this was my first solo missing person case. I checked my gear methodically. GPS unit fully charged, radio batteries fresh, first aid kit stocked, emergency beacon tested. Everything by the book, just like training. The October air bit through my uniform as I pulled into the Alum Cave parking area. The Johnson family was already there, a sedan with Ohio plates, hazard lights blinking like a distress signal. A middle-aged man paced beside the vehicle while a woman sat in the passenger seat, phone pressed to her ear, her voice carrying across the empty lot. "Are you the ranger?" The man rushed toward me before I'd fully exited my truck. David Johnson, 52, insurance adjuster from Columbus. His handshake felt desperate, fingers trembling despite his attempt at firmness. "Our son Matt, he's been missing since last night. He's 24, experienced hiker, but he always calls. Always. Something's wrong." Mrs. Johnson joined us, ending her call with shaking fingers. "I've been calling his phone every 10 minutes. It goes straight to voicemail now." Her voice cracked on the last word, and I noticed how she clutched a crumpled tissue. "He was supposed to check in at 8 p.m. He's never late for check-ins." I pulled out my incident report tablet, fingers moving through the familiar questions while my mind raced. Matt Johnson, 24, 5'10", 165 pounds, brown hair, blue eyes. Last seen wearing a red North Face jacket, dark hiking pants, Merrell boots. Solo hiker, planned day trip to Alum Cave Bluffs, expected return by sunset. Did Matt mention anything unusual? Any specific routes he wanted to explore? I kept my voice steady, professional. The parents needed confidence, not a rookie's uncertainty. David's jaw tightened. He's been reading about local history lately, ghost stories, old legends. Said he wanted to find some historical sites off the main trails. He glanced at his wife. "We thought it was just Matt being Matt. He's got a history degree, loves that kind of stuff." Something cold touched my spine. Not quite fear, but a whisper of unease. In 8 months, I'd learned that hikers who wandered off trail chasing legends rarely had simple rescue stories. "What kind of legends?" Mrs. Johnson pulled out her phone, scrolling through text messages. "He sent me this yesterday morning." She held up the screen. The message read, found references to something called the Burial Ground Keeper in 1800s newspaper archives, supposed to be near Alum Cave area. "Going to check it out. Love you, Mom." My pen paused over the tablet. Burial Ground Keeper. In 8 months of studying local history for interpretive programs, I'd never encountered that particular legend. I'll start the search immediately. Standard protocol is grid pattern from last known position expanding outward. But as I hiked up the Alum Cave Trail, GPS unit beeping with each waypoint, something felt wrong with the forest. The October morning should have been alive with bird calls, rustling leaves, the distant chatter of early squirrels. Instead, an unnatural silence pressed against my eardrums like cotton. Even my boot falls seemed muffled, absorbed by an atmosphere that felt too thick, too watchful. At GPS coordinates 35.6294 degree N, 83.4464 degree W, I found Matt's first marker, a red bandana tied to a tree branch, exactly as described in his hiking plan. But the knot was wrong. In my limited experience, hikers tied quick functional knots. This bandana was secured with an elaborate series of loops and twists, the kind of knot that would take several minutes to tie properly. Why would someone in a hurry spend that kind of time on a trail marker? My radio crackled. Unit 47, this is dispatch. Families asking for updates. Any sign of the subject? Unit 47, I've located first trail marker at planned coordinates. Continuing search pattern. Will advise in 30 minutes. I clipped the radio back to my belt, but static continued to whisper from the speaker. Electronic interference was common in the mountains, but this sounded almost like voices, distant, indistinct conversations that vanished when I tried to focus on them. 50 yards beyond the bandana, I found Matt's second marker. This time, not a deliberate trail sign, but something that made my breakfast sit wrong in my stomach. 3 small stones arranged in a perfect triangle, each stone about the size of a golf ball, positioned with geometric precision that didn't occur naturally. In the center of the triangle, a single boot print in the soft earth. Morel sole pattern, matching the description Mrs. Johnson had given me. But the print faced the wrong direction. According to his hiking plan, Matt should have been heading northwest toward the bluffs. This print pointed due east, toward the dense, untrailed forest where no casual hiker would venture. I knelt beside the stones, careful not to disturb the scene, and pulled out my phone to document the evidence. Through the camera viewfinder, something moved in my peripheral vision, a dark shape shifting between the trees about 30 yards away. When I lowered the phone, nothing was there. The forest remained empty, silent, waiting. My breathing shifted from its normal rhythm, becoming shorter, more conscious. Each inhale felt like I wasn't getting quite enough oxygen, despite the crisp mountain air. I told myself it was elevation. We were at nearly 3,000 feet, but 8 months of daily hiking had acclimatized me to these altitudes. Following the eastward boot prints, I pushed through thick underbrush that scratched at my uniform sleeves. The trail, if it could be called that, seemed to follow an old creek bed, long dry, winding deeper into sections of forest that felt increasingly isolated from the familiar park trails. After 20 minutes of difficult terrain, I emerged into a small clearing that shouldn't have existed. The surrounding trees were massive, old-growth specimens, their canopy so thick that very little sunlight reached the forest floor. Yet here was an open space maybe 40 feet across where nothing grew except sparse yellowed grass. In the center of the clearing sat an object that made me stop walking entirely. A wooden shovel, handle worn smooth by decades of use, blade still dark with soil. It stood upright in the earth, positioned deliberately like a monument. Around its base, the ground was disturbed, not recently but repeatedly, as if this spot had been dug and filled countless times over many years. I approached the shovel with steps that had become unconsciously cautious, like walking on ice that might crack. As I got closer, details became visible that my rational mind struggled to process. The wooden handle was carved with symbols, not random scratches, but deliberate markings that looked almost like letters from some unknown alphabet. The metal blade showed signs of heavy use but no rust, despite what appeared to be significant age. More concerning was what lay scattered around the shovel's base. Pieces of fabric, faded by weather but still recognizable as human clothing. A rotted sneaker with grass growing through the eyelets. Most unsettling, a pair of wire-rimmed glasses, lenses spider-webbed with cracks, frames bent as if they'd been pressed into soil. My hands found my radio without conscious thought. Dispatch Unit 47. I need to report possible evidence of historical disturbance at coordinates. I checked my GPS unit and the numbers made no sense. According to the device, I was at coordinates that should have placed me in the middle of a lake, miles from where I'd started. Unit 47, please repeat your coordinates. Your signal is breaking up. I tried the GPS again, powering it off and on. The coordinates remained impossible. 35.7901 Degan, 83.215P6 Degalio. According to these numbers, I was simultaneously in Tennessee and North Carolina, at an elevation both above and below sea level. The device had either malfunctioned completely, or I was standing in a place that didn't exist on any map. The radio crackled with heavy static, and through the white noise, I heard something that made the hair on my arm stand rigid. A voice, distant but clear, calling for help. "Hello? Is someone there? I'm hurt. I can't. Please, I'm down here." I spun in a circle, scanning the tree line. "Hello? Where are you? Keep talking. I'm a park ranger. Down here. Underground. I can't see anything at all. God, I think I'm buried." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, seeming to rise from the earth itself. I keyed my radio. "Dispatch, I'm hearing calls for help. Possible injured hiker, requesting immediate backup at..." I looked at my GPS again, but the screen had gone completely black. When I tried to restart it, nothing happened. The device was dead despite showing full battery power 5 minutes earlier. "Unit 47, your transmission is unreadable. Please repeat." The voice calling for help continued, now more desperate. "Please, the dirt is so heavy. I can't move my arms. Someone buried me alive. Please." I dropped to my knees in the center of the clearing, pressing my ear to the ground. Through the earth I could hear movement, scratching, clawing sounds, and muffled cries for help that sounded increasingly like Matt Johnson's voice from the family videos his parents had shown me. Without tools, I began digging with my hands, clawing at the hard-packed soil around the wooden shovel. The earth was cold, much colder than it should have been in the October sunshine, and it gave way strangely, too easily in some spots, like it had been disturbed recently but rock-hard in others, as if compressed by immense weight over long periods. As I dug, the voices multiplied, not just Matt's voice now, but others. Men, women, children, all crying out from beneath the ground, all pleading for help, all claiming to be buried alive. The rational part of my mind insisted this was impossible, but my hands kept digging, dirt packing under my fingernails, uniform sleeves soaked with cold soil. "There's no air down here, and please, I've been down here so long. My family is looking for me. I can hear footsteps above. Is someone finally coming? Don't leave us down here. We're still alive. We're all still alive." I dug until my fingertips bled, until my shoulders burned with exhaustion, until I'd excavated a hole nearly 2 feet deep. But I found nothing except more earth, more cold, silent earth that seemed to swallow the voices even as they grew more desperate. When I finally stopped digging, breathing heavily, my hands shaking with adrenaline and exertion, the clearing had changed. The wooden shovel was gone. Where it had stood, only undisturbed grass remained. The scattered clothing, the broken glasses, the signs of repeated excavation, all vanished, leaving me alone in a normal forest clearing with no evidence that anything unusual had ever occurred. But the hole I'd dug remained, dark earth piled around its edges, my fingerprints still visible in the mud. I had physically created this excavation, yet everything that had prompted me to dig had simply disappeared. My radio buzzed with an incoming call. "Unit 47, this is dispatch. The Johnson family is requesting an update. It's been over an hour since your last check-in." I looked at my watch. According to the display, only 20 minutes had passed since I'd entered the clearing. Yet dispatch was reporting an hour. Time itself seemed to be malfunctioning in this place. "Dispatch, Unit 47, still conducting search pattern. No contact with subject yet." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hoarse as if I'd been shouting, though I couldn't remember raising my voice. "Copy, Unit 47. Be advised, Weather Service is reporting possible storm front moving in. Recommend completing search before 1400 hours. I looked up at the sky through the canopy. Clear blue, no clouds visible. Yet as I watched, shadows began moving across the clearing. Not the ordinary shadows of wind-blown branches, but shapes that moved independently, flowing across the ground like spilled ink. The shadows converged around the spot where the shovel had stood, forming a dark patch that seemed to absorb light rather than simply blocking it. As I stared, transfixed, the darkness began to take shape. The outline of a man, tall and gaunt, wearing clothes from another century, a long coat, work boots, a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in impenetrable shadow. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, but somehow I knew it was watching me, evaluating me, deciding something about me that I didn't want to understand. I backed away from the shadow figure, my boots crunching on dry leaves that hadn't been there moments before. With each step backward, the clearing seemed to grow larger, stretching impossibly beyond its original boundaries. The tree line receded like a tide, leaving me in a vast open space under a sky that had darkened to deep twilight, despite my watch still showing late morning. Unit 47, please respond. The radio call sounded distant, as if coming from another world entirely. I fumbled for the radio, but when I keyed the mic, only static emerged. The shadow figure had begun moving, not walking, but gliding across the ground, approaching with the inexorable patience of something that had waited decades for this moment. As it drew closer, details became visible that human eyes shouldn't have been able to perceive. The figure's hands were stained with earth that never dried, fingernails packed with soil from countless graves. His coat was the deep black of a funeral shroud, but sewn with thread that gleamed like bone in the strange twilight. Most terrifying was his face, or rather, the absence of one. Where features should have been, only darkness existed, a void that seemed to pull at my vision, threatening to draw me into its emptiness. When the figure spoke, the voice came from the ground itself, rising through the soles of my boots, vibrating through my bones. Another seeker of the buried truth, another soul drawn to the resting place. I tried to respond, to demand answers, to assert my authority as a federal park ranger, but my voice had abandoned me entirely. My throat worked soundlessly, producing nothing but dry clicks. The young one you seek rests peacefully now. 5 feet of good earth packed tight, just enough air to last, perhaps until sunset. He came seeking old stories, old graves, old secrets. Now he contributes to them. The figure gestured toward the ground, and I could see it clearly now. The outline of a human-shaped depression in the soil, fresh enough that the grass hadn't grown back. A grave, exactly the size and shape of Matt Johnson. Join him, young ranger. The earth is patient. The earth is eternal. Above ground you have decades of worry, of failure, of disappointing those who trust you. Below ground, only peace. Only the sweet silence of the buried. My legs moved without permission, carrying me toward the grave-shaped depression. With each step, the rational voice in my head grew fainter, overwhelmed by a desperate desire to lie down in that cool earth, to let the soil cover me, to find the peace the Shadow Man promised. But as I reached the edge of the grave, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. Through muscles that felt like lead, I managed to pull it from my pocket. A message from my girlfriend, Sarah. Thinking of you today. Know you're nervous about your first solo case, but you've got this. You're going to be an amazing ranger. Love you. The words cut through the supernatural compulsion like a blade. Sarah's faith in me, her absolute confidence that I could handle this responsibility, reminded me of who I was beyond this cursed clearing. I wasn't just some lost soul seeking buried secrets. I was Ranger Ryan Blackwood, and Matt Johnson's family was counting on me. I forced my eyes away from the hypnotic depression in the earth and looked directly at the shadow figure. Where is he? Where is Matt Johnson? The figure's head tilted as if surprised by my resistance. Persistent. Most surrender more easily, but persistence only delays the inevitable. He is where they all rest, 5 feet down, in good Tennessee soil, breathing his final breaths while you waste time with questions. Show me. The Shadow Man gestured, and the clearing transformed. The trees fell away like curtains being drawn, revealing a vast hillside covered with hundreds of small mounds, a hidden cemetery that existed in the spaces between mapped terrain. Each mound was precisely the same size, exactly the dimensions needed for a human grave. My collection, the figure said with pride that chilled my soul. 2 centuries of careful work. Travelers, seekers, the lost, and the curious, all finding the peace they truly sought. Near the center of the cemetery, one mound was different, the soil still dark and loose, recently disturbed. Fresh. From beneath it came a weak tapping sound, growing fainter with each repetition. I ran toward the fresh grave, no longer caring about supernatural dangers or mysterious shadow men. Matt Johnson was down there, alive, running out of time. Everything else was secondary to that simple fact. The shadow figure followed, gliding effortlessly over the uneven terrain. You cannot save him, young ranger. The earth has claimed him as it claims all who venture into my domain. But I offer you choice: die fighting uselessly, or accept peaceful burial beside him. I dropped to my knees beside the fresh mound and began digging with renewed fury. This time the earth was real, solid, requiring every ounce of strength I possessed. But 3 feet down, my fingers struck something that wasn't soil, the smooth metal of a belt buckle. Matt, can you hear me? I'm coming." A weak voice rose from the grave, muffled but unmistakably human. "Help. Can't breathe. Getting dark." I dug faster, using my hands like shovels, throwing dirt in all directions. The shadow figure watched with patient amusement, as if my efforts were entertaining but ultimately futile. "He has perhaps 10 minutes of air remaining," the figure observed. "Even if you reach him, how will you lift him from a grave 5 feet deep? How will you carry an unconscious man through miles of unmarked forest? You have chosen to fail spectacularly, rather than fail peacefully." But as I dug, as my uniform tore and my hands bled, as exhaustion threatened to collapse my muscles entirely, I felt something I'd never experienced in 8 months of ranger training. Not the nervous energy of someone trying to prove himself, but the steady determination of someone who belonged exactly where he was, doing exactly what needed to be done. 4 feet down, I hit the top of Matt's head. He was unconscious but breathing, face covered with dirt, body wedged into a grave so narrow he couldn't move his arms. Working carefully to avoid causing a cave-in, I cleared soil from around his head and shoulders, creating enough space to slip a rescue rope under his arms. The shadow figure's amusement faded to irritation. Impossible. No one escapes the burial ground. No one resists the call of peaceful earth. "Watch me," I muttered, securing the rope and beginning the exhausting process of hauling an unconscious man from a makeshift grave. As Matt's body emerged from the earth, something fundamental changed in the hidden cemetery. The carefully maintained mounds began to shift and settle, as if whatever power had preserved them was weakening. Other voices began calling from beneath the ground, not the hypnotic pleas I'd heard earlier, but genuine cries for help from souls that had been trapped for decades. The shadow figure let out a howl of rage that shook the trees. 2 centuries of work, generations of peaceful rest disturbed by one foolish boy who refuses to accept his place. I managed to drag Matt completely free of the grave and checked for vital signs. Weak pulse, shallow breathing, but alive. My radio, which had been dead for over an hour, suddenly crackled to life. Unit 47, please respond immediately. We have multiple emergency services en route to your last known position. Unit 47 to dispatch. I have located the missing subject. He's alive but needs immediate medical evacuation. Sending GPS coordinates now. I checked my GPS unit, which had mysteriously returned to normal function. The coordinates showed exactly where I should be. On a steep hillside about 2 miles east of the Alum Cave Trail, in terrain that was difficult but not impossible to reach with emergency vehicles. Copy Unit 47. Medical team ETA 15 minutes. What's the condition of the subject? Unconscious, possible hypothermia, signs of being buried in soil. Victim appears to have been trapped underground. As I radioed for help, the shadow figure and his cemetery began to fade like mist in sunlight. The hundreds of graves remained visible, but they looked different now. Older, more natural, like genuine historical burial sites rather than a supernatural prison. "This is not finished, young ranger," the fading voice promised. "Others will come seeking old stories, old graves. Others will hear the call of peaceful earth. I am patient. I am eternal." The shadow man vanished entirely, leaving me alone with an unconscious Matt Johnson on a hillside that looked like any other section of the Great Smoky Mountains. But the graves remained. Dozens of small, weathered mounds that would need investigation, documentation, and probably the attention of historians and archaeologists. 15 minutes later, the familiar sound of helicopter rotors echoed through the valley. As the medical evacuation team worked to stabilize Matt, The lead paramedic asked the question I'd been dreading. How exactly did you find him buried up here? This isn't anywhere near the established search grid. I looked down at Matt Johnson, unconscious but breathing steadily, soil still packed under his fingernails and dirt in his hair. Then I looked at the hidden cemetery, evidence of something that had been happening in these mountains for 2 centuries, something that would have continued happening if one rookie ranger hadn't been too stubborn to give up. Lucky guess, I said finally. Sometimes you just have to follow the evidence, even when it leads somewhere impossible. 2 hours later, I sat in the ranger station writing the most difficult incident report of my 8-month career. How do you officially document a supernatural encounter with an immortal gravedigger? How do you explain finding a missing person buried alive in a cemetery that doesn't appear on any map? In the end, I stuck to verifiable facts. Matt Johnson had wandered off trail while investigating local historical sites. He'd fallen into an unmarked grave from a forgotten cemetery, possibly dating to the 1800s. Loose soil had collapsed around him, trapping him underground until rescued. Medical evaluation showed no permanent damage, though he remained unconscious and would likely have no memory of the incident. The cemetery itself would require extensive historical research. Preliminary investigation suggested it might be related to an early settlement or perhaps an outbreak of disease that necessitated rapid, remote burials. The site would be protected pending archaeological study. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Heard you found the missing hiker. Knew you could do it, so proud of you. I smiled, feeling something settle in my chest that had been restless for 8 months. Maybe I really was cut out for this job after all. But as I finished the report and prepared to head home, one detail nagged at my mind. When the medical team had cleaned the soil from Matt's face, revealing his features clearly for the first time, I'd noticed something that didn't make it into any official documentation. Carved into his forehead, so lightly that it might have been mistaken for scratches from debris, were symbols that matched exactly the markings I'd seen on the wooden shovel handle. Symbols that looked almost like letters from some unknown alphabet, as if something had been marking him, claiming him, preparing him for a permanent place in that hidden cemetery. I locked the report in my desk drawer and headed for the parking lot, but stopped at the threshold. Through the station windows, I could see the Smoky Mountains stretching endlessly into the distance, thousands of acres of unmarked wilderness, countless hidden valleys and forgotten clearings. How many other supernatural guardians waited out there? How many other secrets lay buried in soil that had been disturbed and refilled for centuries? And how many more families would come to me, desperate and pleading, trusting a rookie ranger to find their missing loved ones in a wilderness that held far more dangers than bears, cliffs, and bad weather? I thought about the Shadow Man's final words. Others will come seeking old stories, old graves. He was right, of course. There would be others. There would always be others. And when they came, when they disappeared into the hidden places between the mapped trails, their families would call the ranger station. They would trust us to bring their loved ones home safely. The difference was next time I wouldn't be a rookie stumbling through my first supernatural encounter. Next time I'd be Ranger Ryan Blackwood, who had faced down an immortal gravedigger and won, who had pulled a man back from the edge of an impossible grave and returned him to the world of the living. 8 months ago, I'd been eager to prove myself worthy of the badge. Tonight, as I drove home through mountain roads that seemed somehow less mysterious than they had that morning, I realized the badge had been proving itself worthy of me. My radio crackled one final time as I reached the park boundary. Unit 47, this is dispatch. Johnson family wants to thank you personally. They're waiting at the hospital if you want to stop by. Unit 47 copies. En route to hospital. As I changed direction toward town, I caught myself glancing in the rearview mirror at the dark mountains behind me. Somewhere out there, in a hidden cemetery that existed between mapped coordinates, dozens of old graves held their secrets under Tennessee soil, and somewhere else in places I hadn't discovered yet, other supernatural guardians waited with the patience of centuries for the next curious soul to wander off the established trails. But tonight, Matt Johnson would sleep in a hospital bed instead of a grave. Tonight, his parents would hug their son instead of planning his funeral. Tonight, One family would go home intact because a rookie ranger had been too stubborn to accept the impossible. It wasn't a perfect solution. The immortal gravedigger would return. Other hikers would disappear, and I'd probably face horrors I couldn't even imagine yet. But for tonight, it was enough. My name is Ryan Blackwood, and I'm a park ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains. And despite what happened today, despite everything I learned about the true dangers hiding in these ancient hills, I've never been more certain that this is exactly where I belong. If this story is giving you chills, what would you do in Ryan's situation? Would you have kept digging when the voices started calling from underground? Comment below. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? The way Rookie Ranger Ryan faced down a centuries-old supernatural entity and actually won? Like if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about those symbols carved into Matt's forehead. Were they protection marks or something far more sinister? I read every single comment. What other supernatural entities do you think are hiding in America's national parks? The mountains hold secrets that go back centuries, and Ryan Blackwood is just getting started. My name is Tommy Blackwood, and I saw Sarah Beth Collins for the last time 3 meters ahead of me on the trail before she simply vanished. 23 years I've been a ranger at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 23 years of search and rescue operations, bear encounters, lost hikers, medical emergencies, and every kind of wilderness crisis you can imagine. I thought I'd seen everything. I was wrong. October 15th, 2019. 2:47 p.m. The coordinates are burned into my memory. 35.6532 to N, 83.4782 to W. Sarah Beth Collins, 22 years old from Knoxville, had been hiking the Appalachian Trail section through Cataract Falls when I encountered her on my afternoon patrol. Sweet kid with that infectious southern charm, wearing a bright red hiking jacket and carrying a well-worn Gregory pack that screamed, "Experienced hiker." "Afternoon, miss," I'd called out, my Danner boots crunching on the October leaves. "Beautiful day for hiking." She turned with that bright smile that made her look even younger than 22. "Yes, sir, Ranger Blackwood," she said, reading my name tag. "Perfect weather for it. You wouldn't happen to know if the trail conditions are good up toward Charlie's Bunyan?" I'd checked my Garmin GPS and consulted the morning's trail reports on my Motorola radio. "Should be clear, but weather service is calling for possible storms later. You planning to camp tonight?" "No, sir, just a day hike. Should be back to my car by sunset." That's when I should have insisted she turn back. Should have listened to the instinct that had kept me alive in these mountains for over 2 decades. But the trail ahead looked clear, weather was holding, and Sarah Beth Collins seemed like she knew what she was doing. "Just stay on the marked trail," I'd told her. "And if you see any storm clouds building, turn around immediately. These mountains can turn dangerous fast." "Will do, Ranger Blackwood. Thank you kindly." She'd waved and continued up the trail. I'd followed about 15 feet behind, planning to hike the same section as part of my patrol route. My wife Jennifer had packed my lunch that morning, turkey sandwich, apple, thermos of coffee, and I was looking forward to eating it at the overlook ahead. That's when I heard it. A child crying, not unusual in itself. Families hiked these trails regularly, but something about the sound made the hair on my neck stand up. It was too isolated, too desperate. And it was coming from off the main trail, somewhere down in the hollow where no marked paths existed. Sarah Beth stopped walking. "Do you hear that?" she called back to me. "Yeah, I do." I keyed my radio. "Base, this is Unit 7. I've got possible assistance needed. Coordinates 35.6532 north, 83.4782 west. Investigating sounds of distressed juvenile off-trail." "Copy, Unit 7. Proceed with caution." The crying continued, a high, pitiful wailing that cut through the autumn air like a blade. Sarah Beth was already moving toward the sound, her motherly instincts overriding her hiking plan. "Miss Collins, wait," I called. "Let me take point." But she was already pushing through the mountain laurel, Following that heartbreaking sound, I followed, my hand instinctively checking my equipment. Flashlight, first aid kit, emergency radio, the weight of my duty belt familiar after all these years. The crying grew louder as we descended into the hollow. It was a little girl's voice, maybe 6 or 7 years old, sobbing for her mommy. Every parent and caregiver within 50 miles would have run toward that sound. Sarah Beth was moving faster now, crashing through the underbrush. "It's okay, honey," she called out. "We're coming to help you." That's when my training kicked in. Something was wrong. The crying never moved. In 23 years of rescuing lost children, they always moved. They heard adult voices and tried to walk toward them, or at least the sound shifted as they turned their heads. This crying stayed perfectly stationary, like it was coming from a fixed speaker. My breathing became shallow, rapid. The familiar weight of my gear suddenly felt different, heavier, more cumbersome. Sweat formed on my forehead despite the cool October air. "Miss Collins, stop," I shouted. "Something's not right here." But she was already out of sight, following that damned crying down into the dense hollow where the afternoon shadows gathered thick as syrup. I followed her red jacket through the trees, my Garmin GPS beeping warnings about leaving marked trails. The crying was getting closer, more desperate. A little girl sobbing in absolute terror, begging for help. Then I saw her. About 20 feet ahead in a small clearing surrounded by massive oak trees, sat a little girl in a white dress. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with long brown hair and bare feet. She was crying into her hands, shoulders shaking with each sob. Sarah Beth was already kneeling beside her. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said in that gentle voice. "What's your name? Where's your family?" The little girl looked up with tear-streaked cheeks. "I'm lost," she whispered. "I can't find my mommy." Every instinct I'd developed in 2 decades of wilderness work was screaming at me. Children didn't end up in remote hollows wearing pristine white dresses. Children didn't sit perfectly still while crying. Children didn't appear in areas that required serious hiking to reach. But Sarah Beth was already opening her pack, pulling out water and trail snacks. "It's going to be okay, honey. This is Ranger Blackwood, and he's going to help us find your family." I approached slowly, my hand moving to my radio. "Base, this is Unit 7. I've located a lost juvenile, approximately 6 years old, female, going to need family services and possible medical evaluation." The radio crackled with static. Nothing else. I tried again. "Base, Unit 7, do you copy?" More static. My radio had never failed in these mountains. Never. The little girl stood up, still crying. "Will you help me find my mommy?" she asked Sarah Beth. "She's just a little further, in the old place." Sarah Beth looked at me questioningly. I shook my head hard. "We're not going anywhere until I can raise base on the radio," I said firmly. "Miss Collins, we need to get this child back to the main trail." But the little girl was already walking deeper into the hollow. "Please," she called back, her voice echoing strangely among the trees. "My mommy is scared. She needs help too." And Sarah Beth Collins, with that big heart that had probably gotten her into trouble her whole life, followed. "Miss Collins, negative," I shouted. "We do not leave established trail." But she was disappearing into the trees, following a 6-year-old child in a white dress toward whatever waited in the deepest part of these mountains. I had 2 choices: abandon a civilian to pursue unauthorized trail departure alone, or follow and maintain visual contact. 23 years of training made the choice automatic. I followed. The hollow descended sharply, becoming a narrow ravine filled with old-growth trees that blocked most of the afternoon sun. My GPS was giving conflicting readings, showing elevation changes that didn't match the terrain. The temperature dropped at least 10 degrees in the span of 50 feet. Ahead, I could hear Sarah Beth talking to the child. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Rebecca," the little girl replied. "Rebecca Miller. My mommy's name is Susan Miller. Do you know her?" Miller. The name triggered something in my memory, but I couldn't place it. My breathing was getting more labored, not from exertion, but from the growing certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with this situation. The crying had stopped. Now there was only the sound of our feet on the forest floor, and the little girl's voice, always just ahead, always leading deeper into the ravine. My radio squawked suddenly. "Unit 7, this is Base. What's your status?" I keyed the mic immediately. "Base, Unit 7. I'm approximately half a mile off trail in the hollow southeast of Cataract Falls, following lost juvenile and civilian. GPS coordinates are..." I looked at my Garmin. The screen was showing impossible readings. "GPS is malfunctioning. Requesting backup and K9 unit for search assistance." "Unit 7. We show you on main trail at your last reported position. Are you sure about your location?" I looked around. We were definitely in a deep ravine surrounded by trees that had to be centuries old. "Negative, Base. I am definitely off main trail. Send backup to coordinates 35.6532 north, 83.4782 west, and begin search pattern southeast." "Copy. Unit 7. Backup en route." But even as I said it, I knew backup would never find us. My GPS was lying, my radio was cutting in and out, and we were following a little girl who shouldn't exist toward a place that shouldn't be accessible. The ravine opened into a wider area, and I caught up to Sarah Beth. She was standing next to a massive boulder, looking confused. "Ranger Blackwood," she said quietly. "The little girl, she was just here." I scanned the area. Dense forest in every direction, towering trees, scattered boulders, no sign of a child in a white dress. "Rebecca," Sarah Beth called. "Rebecca, where are you?" Silence. Then, from somewhere deeper in the woods, the crying started again. But now it sounded different. More children crying, multiple voices all calling for help. Sarah Beth started toward the sound. I grabbed her arm. "Miss Collins, we're leaving, now." "But the children..." "There are no children." The words came out harder than I intended. "We're turning around and getting back to the main trail." She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "I saw her, Ranger Blackwood. That little girl was real. She's lost and scared. And there are others." The crying got louder. Now I could distinguish at least 4 different children's voices, all sobbing, all calling for their mommies, all coming from deeper in the forest where the shadows gathered thick as molasses. My hands were trembling as I checked my compass. The needle was spinning wildly, unable to find magnetic north. Every piece of technology I carried was failing simultaneously. "Sarah Beth," I said, using her first name for the first time. "Look at me. Really look at me. I've been a ranger for 23 years. Children do not end up in places like this wearing white dresses. Children do not lead adults away from established trails. What we followed is not a child." She stared at me, then back toward the crying voices. I could see the battle in her eyes between common sense and the overwhelming urge to help what sounded like children in distress. "Then what was it?" she whispered. Before I could answer, the crying stopped abruptly. Complete silence fell over the forest like a heavy blanket. Even the normal sounds, birds, squirrels, wind in the leaves, disappeared entirely. In that silence, I heard footsteps. Multiple sets of small feet moving through the underbrush, getting closer. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Tommy's situation? Comment below. I grabbed Sarah Beth's hand. "We're leaving, right now." But when I turned toward what should have been the way we came, I saw only unbroken forest. The ravine we'd descended was gone. In its place stood massive trees that looked centuries old, their trunks easily 6 feet in diameter. "That's impossible," Sarah Beth breathed. "We just came that way." The footsteps were getting closer, small feet on forest floor, but too many of them, too coordinated, moving in patterns that children don't move in. I pulled out my flashlight, a high-powered tactical LED that could illuminate a football field. The beam cut through the growing darkness, revealing trees, boulders, underbrush, nothing else. But the footsteps continued, all around us now. My radio crackled. "Unit 7, this is Base. We cannot locate your position. Please confirm coordinates. I keyed the mic. Base, I am in unknown location with civilian. GPS non-functional. Request immediate search and rescue deployment, all available units. Static. Then through the static, a little girl's voice. Please help us, Ranger Blackwood, we're lost too. I stared at the radio. The voice hadn't come from the forest. It had come from my radio. Sarah Beth heard it too. Her face went white. How is that possible? Before I could answer, my flashlight beam caught movement. About 30 feet away, partially hidden behind a massive oak tree, stood the little girl in the white dress. She was watching us, no longer crying, but now I could see her clearly. Her dress wasn't white. It was stained with something dark. Her bare feet were covered in mud and what looked like dried blood. And her eyes reflected the flashlight beam like an animal's. Rebecca? Sarah Beth called softly. The little girl tilted her head at an angle that was too sharp, too unnatural. When she smiled, I saw that her teeth were pointed. More movement in the trees. Other shapes, child-sized, but wrong somehow. They moved in ways that children don't move. Too fluid, too silent, with joints that bent in directions that shouldn't be possible. My mouth went dry. Sweat was running down my back despite the cold. Every muscle in my body was tensing for fight or flight, but there was nowhere to run. Miss Collins, I said quietly, I need you to stay calm and stay close to me. We're going to walk slowly toward what looks like the most open area. Do not run, do not make sudden movements, and do not, under any circumstances, respond to anything they say. They? She whispered. I counted at least 6 shapes moving through the trees. All child-sized, all wrong. The little girl, Rebecca, stepped out from behind the tree. In the flashlight beam, I could see that her white dress was actually a burial shroud, rotted and stained with decades of decay. We've been waiting for you, she said in a voice that sounded like grinding stone. The other children told us you were coming. Other children. My blood turned to ice as I remembered the name Miller. Rebecca Miller. 3 months ago, a search and rescue operation for a family that had gone missing while camping. Rebecca Miller, age 6. Susan Miller, age 34. Never found. Case closed due to lack of evidence. You're the Miller family, I breathed. Rebecca's smile widened, showing more of those pointed teeth. We're all here, Ranger Blackwood. All the children who got lost in these woods. We've been waiting so long for someone to find us. The other shapes were getting closer, and now I could see them more clearly. Children of various ages, all wearing clothes from different time periods, some in hiking gear from recent years, others in clothing that looked decades old. All of them had that same unnatural way of moving, those same reflecting eyes. But we're not lost anymore, Rebecca continued. We found something much better than our families. We found the old ones. They take care of us now. They feed us. They give us purpose. Sarah Beth was gripping my arm so tightly I could feel her fingernails through my jacket. Tommy, she whispered. What are they? The temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. My breath was visible in the flashlight beam. The forest around us was changing, becoming something older, more primitive. The trees were growing taller, their branches intertwining overhead to block out the sky. They want to meet you, Rebecca said to Sarah Beth. Especially you. You have such a kind heart, such a need to help others. The old ones like that. They can use that. I positioned myself between Sarah Beth and the children. My training was useless here, but my protective instincts were still intact. We're not going anywhere with you, I said firmly. Rebecca laughed, and the sound echoed through the forest like breaking glass. Oh, Ranger Blackwood, you think you have a choice. The other children stepped out of the trees. I counted 8 of them now, ranging in age from maybe 5 to 12. All with those same reflecting eyes, that same unnatural way of moving. And behind them, just at the edge of my flashlight beam, I saw adult shapes. Tall, thin figures that didn't quite look human. Too many joints in their arms and legs, faces that were wrong somehow. The old ones have been in these mountains since before your people came, Rebecca explained, her child's voice carrying impossible authority. They've been feeding on lost hikers and campers for centuries, but they prefer children. Children are more pliable, easier to convert. My radio suddenly came alive with chatter, multiple voices speaking in languages I didn't recognize. Ancient languages. The static was forming patterns that almost sounded like chanting, but adults have their uses too, Rebecca continued. Especially adults with authority. Rangers, police officers, search and rescue workers, people that others trust, people who can lead more victims to us. That's when I understood. This wasn't random. They hadn't been targeting lost hikers, they'd been targeting me. A veteran ranger with an impeccable reputation, someone who could lead others into these woods under the guise of official business. Sarah Beth had just been the bait. My breathing was coming in short gasps now. The flashlight was growing dimmer, the battery draining impossibly fast. In minutes, we'd be in complete darkness with these things. I made a decision that went against every instinct, every protocol, every bit of training I'd received. I grabbed Sarah Beth's hand and ran. We crashed through the underbrush like charging bears, branches tearing at our clothes, roots trying to trip us. Behind us, I could hear the children laughing, a sound like breaking glass and dying animals. My radio was screaming now, not with voices but with a high-pitched whine that felt like needles in my ears. I ripped it from my belt and threw it away. The forest was changing around us as we ran. Trees were moving, paths appearing and disappearing, the ground itself shifting under our feet. My GPS was showing coordinates that couldn't exist, elevations that defied physics. "Tommy!" Sarah Beth gasped as we ran. "My pack!" I looked back. Her red hiking jacket was caught on a branch 20 feet behind us. But more importantly, the children were following. All 8 of them, moving through the trees like wolves, their reflecting eyes visible in the growing darkness. "Leave it!" I shouted. We kept running, but the forest seemed to be stretching, becoming larger, more maze-like. Every direction looked the same. Ancient trees, twisted paths, shadows that moved independently of their sources. My flashlight died completely. In the absolute darkness, I could hear them all around us. Not just the children, but the adult things too, moving through the trees with sounds that weren't quite footsteps. Sarah Beth was crying now, trying to stay quiet but unable to control her terror. I didn't blame her. My own hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip her hand. Then I remembered something, my emergency backup, a small LED pen light attached to my keychain. It wasn't much, but it was something. The tiny beam revealed a narrow path between 2 massive boulders. Not much, but it was the only option that didn't lead directly toward the sounds of pursuit. We squeezed through the gap and found ourselves in a small clearing surrounded by stone formations that looked almost man-made. Ancient stone circles, like the remains of some primitive structure. In the center of the clearing was a fire pit, and the fire was burning. "Someone's here," Sarah Beth whispered hopefully. But as we got closer, I could see that the fire was wrong. The flames were too blue, too cold-looking. They gave off light but no heat, and sitting around the fire were more children. These ones were different, though, older-looking, more decayed. Some appeared to be nothing but bones held together by rotted clothing. The newest arrival looked up as we approached, a boy, maybe 10 years old, wearing a Boy Scout uniform from what looked like the 1970s. "Welcome to the circle," he said in a voice like grinding gravel. "You're just in time for the ceremony." The circle? I looked around and realized that the stone formations weren't random. They formed a perfect circle around the fire pit, and carved into each stone were symbols that hurt to look at directly. "What ceremony?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The boy smiled with teeth that were black and broken. "The choosing ceremony. The old ones are here tonight. They want to decide which of you will join us, and which will feed us." More figures emerged from the darkness beyond the stone circle, the tall, thin adult shapes I'd glimpsed before. But now I could see them clearly in the cold blue firelight. They weren't human, had never been human. They were something much older, much hungrier. Their limbs were too long. Their faces were collections of angles that didn't belong on any earthly creature, and their eyes were black voids that seemed to swallow light. The old ones. Sarah Beth made a sound somewhere between a sob and a scream. I pulled her closer, knowing it was hopeless but unable to abandon the protective instincts that had defined my career. "Don't be afraid," Rebecca said, appearing at the edge of the circle. "It doesn't hurt much. And afterwards, you'll never be hungry again, never be lonely, never be lost." She was right about one thing. We were definitely lost. My training had prepared me for bears, hypothermia, broken bones, heart attacks, and every natural disaster the mountains could throw at rangers. It hadn't prepared me for this. But I hadn't survived 23 years in these mountains by giving up when things got tough. I still had my knife, a tactical blade that I'd carried for years. It probably wouldn't do much against supernatural entities, but it was better than nothing. More importantly, I still had my brain. And one thing I'd learned in decades of wilderness work was that there's always another option, always another path. I looked around the circle again, studying the stone formations. Ancient, yes, but created by intelligence, which meant they followed rules, and anything that followed rules could be broken. The old ones were moving closer now, their alien forms gliding rather than walking. The children, or things that had once been children, were arranging themselves around the circle like they'd done this many times before. "Sarah Beth," I whispered, "when I give the signal, I want you to run toward the largest gap between the stones. Don't stop, don't look back, and don't listen to anything they say." "I'm not leaving you," she whispered back. "Yes, you are, because that's the only way either of us survives this." One of the old ones was standing directly in front of us now, studying us with those black void eyes. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, like the sound was being created inside our heads. "The ranger will join our children," it said. "His authority will be useful for gathering more food. The girl will feed us tonight." That's when I saw it. One of the stones had a crack running through it, and the symbols carved into its surface were incomplete, broken by the damage. A weak point in their circle. I grabbed Sarah Beth's hand and charged. We hit the damaged stone at full speed, and I felt it shift under the impact. The symbols flared with cold light, then went dark. Behind us, the old ones let out a sound like screaming wind. The children began to wail in voices that belonged in nightmares. But we were through. The forest beyond the circle looked different, more normal, more like the Smoky Mountains I knew. I could even see stars through the canopy overhead. We ran harder than I'd ever run in my life, crashing through underbrush, leaping over fallen logs, following what might have been an actual trail. Behind us, the pursuit continued, but it sounded more distant now. The wailing voices were fading, the unnatural sounds becoming part of the general forest noise. My emergency GPS, a backup unit I'd forgotten about, suddenly beeped to life. Real coordinates, a real location. We were less than a mile from the main trail. 20 minutes later, we stumbled out of the forest onto the Appalachian Trail, gasping and bleeding from dozens of scratches. My radio, the spare one I carried for emergencies, crackled to life with normal chatter. "Unit 7, this is base. Please respond." I keyed the mic with trembling hands. "Base, this is Unit 7. I have civilian Sarah Beth Collins with me. We're on Main Trail approximately 1 mile south of Cataract Falls. Request immediate extraction and medical evaluation." "Copy, Unit 7. Are you injured? You've been missing for 6 hours." 6 hours. It had felt like days. "Negative on injuries," I replied. "But we need immediate extraction. And base, close the trails in the hollow southeast of Cataract Falls. Indefinitely." "Copy, Unit 7. Can you provide reason for trail closure?" I looked at Sarah Beth, who was staring back toward the forest with haunted eyes. "How do you explain something like this in an official report?" "Environmental hazard," I said finally. "Unstable terrain and wildlife concerns." 2 hours later, we were back at Ranger headquarters, giving statements that would become the most heavily redacted incident report in park history. The official version blamed disorientation due to sudden weather changes and equipment malfunction. The unofficial version sits in a locked file that only the senior rangers have access to. Sarah Beth Collins never hiked alone again. She moved to Florida 6 months later, as far from mountains as she could get. We still exchange Christmas cards, but we never talk about that day. The trails in that hollow remain closed. The official reason is unstable geology. Rangers are instructed to redirect any hikers who ask about the area, and we maintain regular patrols to ensure the barriers stay in place. But sometimes, on quiet nights when I'm working late shifts, my radio picks up voices that shouldn't be there. Children crying for help, adults calling for rescue from coordinates that don't exist on any map. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see Rebecca Miller standing at the edge of the forest, wearing that stained white dress, smiling with those pointed teeth, waiting for the next kind-hearted person who won't be able to ignore a child's cry for help. I've put in for transfer to a different park 3 times. Each time my request gets denied for reasons that don't quite make sense. It's like something wants me to stay here, wants me to keep working these mountains. My wife Jennifer asks why I come home so late these days, why I check the locks twice before bed, why I've installed security cameras around our house. I tell her it's just standard precautions. I don't tell her about the dreams where I'm back in that circle, where the old ones are still deciding which of us will join them and which will feed them. I don't tell her that sometimes when I look at my own children sleeping, I see Rebecca Miller standing in their bedroom doorway, smiling that terrible smile. And I definitely don't tell her that 3 weeks ago, during a routine patrol near Cataract Falls, I found a small piece of red fabric caught on a branch. The same bright red as Sarah Beth Collins' hiking jacket. The jacket she'd lost when we ran from the lost children. The jacket that shouldn't still be here after all these months, unless they're still waiting for us to come back, unless they know we'll have to return eventually, because that's what Rangers do. We go into the dangerous places so others don't have to. We face the things that threaten innocent people, even when those things used to be innocent people themselves. My name is Tommy Blackwood, and I've been a ranger at Great Smoky Mountains National Park for 23 years. And tomorrow, I'll go back into those mountains again. Because that's what the job demands. And because somewhere in those woods, in that place that doesn't exist on any official map, the lost children of Devil's Canyon are still crying for help. And as long as there are people like Sarah Beth Collins in this world, people with kind hearts who can't ignore a child's cry for help, those children will never truly be lost. They'll be hunting. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Sarah Beth's jacket. I read every single one. My name is Michael Torres, and when 3 people swore they saw Emma Thompson in different locations at the same hour, I knew we were facing something beyond comprehension. 23 years as a ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains had taught me to trust evidence over emotion, facts over fear. But standing in the ranger station at 2:47 p.m. on October 15, 2018, listening to 3 separate witness statements that defied the laws of physics, my trained skepticism began to crack like ice under pressure. She was definitely at Cataract Falls around 1:15, insisted Jake Morrison, a local hiking guide whose weather-beaten face carried the credibility of someone who'd spent 30 years reading these mountains. Wearing that bright red jacket, talking to some older couple by the trail marker, I called out to her, but she didn't seem to hear me. 15 minutes later, according to my radio log, Rebecca Chen had reported the exact same red jacket at Charlie's Bunyan, a location that required a 2-hour hike from Cataract Falls. I'm positive it was her, Rebecca maintained, her voice tight with confusion. Same blonde hair, same height. She was with this middle-aged man and woman walking toward the backcountry. But what shattered my rational worldview completely was Tommy Fitzgerald's statement. At 1:30 p.m., right between the other 2 sightings, he'd spotted Emma Thompson at Alum Cave Trail talking to a real nice older couple who seemed to be helping her with directions. 3 locations, same time frame, same red jacket, same mysterious helpful couple. Impossible. My breathing became shallow as I stared at the topographical map spread across my desk. The 3 locations formed a perfect triangle, each point separated by miles of rugged terrain and hours of hiking time. Emma Thompson couldn't have been in all 3 places simultaneously, unless something was manipulating reality itself. I picked up my Motorola radio with hands that felt detached from my body. Unit 47 to base, requesting immediate backup for enhanced search operation. We have conflicting witness reports that require investigation. Copy that, Torres. What's your assessment? The words stuck in my throat like broken glass. How do you radio in that the laws of physics have apparently stopped working in your sector? Base, we're dealing with unusual circumstances. Request backup units at all 3 witness locations immediately. My smartphone buzzed against my hip. A text from Sarah, my wife. Lily wants to know if you'll make it to her soccer game at 6. She's been practicing that corner kick you taught her. I closed my eyes, picturing my 8-year-old daughter's determined face as she lined up for that kick, blonde pigtails bouncing with concentration. This morning, kissing them both goodbye in our kitchen that smelled of coffee and pancakes, I'd promised to be home for dinner. Daddy always comes home, I'd told Lily, ruffling her hair, now staring at evidence that reality itself was breaking down. That promise felt like it belonged to a different universe. The scent of pine sap and decay drifted through the station's open window, carrying something else underneath, something sweet and rotten like flowers left too long in stagnant water. My stomach contracted into a tight knot as a realization hit me. Emma Thompson hadn't just disappeared. She'd been scattered across impossible locations, each sighting involving the same helpful couple. Someone, or something, was playing games with space and time. I grabbed my emergency pack, checking contents with the automatic precision of 2 decades experience. Garmin GPS unit, extra batteries, emergency radio, first aid kit, energy bars, water purification tablets, emergency shelter, rope, headlamp. Everything felt heavier than usual, as if gravity itself had intensified around the supernatural wrongness seeping into my mountains. The temperature in the station dropped suddenly, my breath forming small clouds despite the October warmth outside. The hairs on my forearms rose as an unnatural chill crawled across my skin like spider legs. My radio crackled with static. Unit 47, this is Ranger Martinez at Cataract Falls. Found something you need to see. Emma Thompson's backpack, but it's... Jesus, Torres, it's hanging 20 feet up in a tree. No climbing marks, no broken branches. It's like someone just placed it there. The professional calm I'd maintained for over 2 decades shattered like a windshield hit by a stone. Sweat broke out across my forehead despite the sudden cold, and my vision narrowed to a tunnel focused on the radio in my trembling hand. Copy that, Martinez. Don't touch anything. I'm en route. I headed for the door, but my legs felt disconnected from my brain, each step requiring conscious effort. The rational part of my mind, the part that had successfully concluded 847 search and rescue operations, kept trying to find logical explanations. Mass hallucination, coordinated hoax, mistaken identity. But the primitive part of my brain, the part that still remembered when humans were prey animals hiding from things that hunted in the dark, whispered a different truth. Something inhuman was playing with us. The drive to Cataract Falls normally took 22 minutes on the winding mountain roads. I made it in 15, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles went white. Radio chatter filled the cab of my Ford Ranger as other units reported their findings. Unit 23 at Charlie's Bunyan found Emma's hiking boots arranged in a perfect circle around the trail marker. They're bone dry, but it rained here 2 hours ago. Unit 12 at Alum Cave. Her water bottle is stuck in solid rock like the stone grew around it. Each report sent fresh waves of adrenaline through my system. My pulse hammered in my ears as the evidence mounted. This wasn't a normal missing person case. This was something that operated outside the natural laws I'd spent my career understanding. The parking area at Cataract Falls buzzed with activity. 3 ranger vehicles, an ambulance on standby, and the growing crowd of hikers who'd been turned away from the closed trail. I spotted Martinez immediately. His grim expression told me everything I needed to know before I even looked up at the tree. Emma Thompson's bright purple backpack hung from a branch like a bizarre Christmas ornament. The North Face logo faced outward, clearly visible, as if positioned for maximum visibility. But Martinez was right. No broken branches, no scuff marks on the bark, no possible way for it to have gotten there through natural means. "Any ideas, boss?" Martinez asked, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by something closer to fear. I stared up at the impossible sight, my mind racing through explanations that made less sense with each passing second. "Has anyone checked inside the pack?" "Waiting for you. Figured you'd want to see it first." I borrowed Martinez's telescoping rescue pole and carefully maneuvered the backpack down. The moment it touched my hands, every nerve ending in my body screamed danger. The fabric felt wrong, too smooth, too warm, like touching skin instead of nylon. Inside, Emma's belongings were arranged with meticulous care. Driver's license, trail maps, energy bars, water purification tablets, everything a responsible hiker would carry. But underneath, wrapped in a plastic bag, I found something that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. A Polaroid photograph. The image showed Emma Thompson standing between an elderly couple outside a rustic cabin. All three were smiling, but Emma's expression looked glassy, unfocused. The couple appeared normal. A man with silver hair and kind eyes, a woman with a grandmother's warm smile. They stood on either side of Emma like proud parents, their hands resting gently on her shoulders. But their eyes were completely black. Not the iris, not the pupil. The entire visible eye, from corner to corner, was the deep black of starless nights and forgotten graves. My hands started shaking so violently, I nearly dropped the photograph. Sweat poured down my back despite the mountain air growing colder by the minute. The rational part of my mind tried to explain it away. Photo defect, lighting trick, digital manipulation. But I knew better. After 23 years in these mountains, I could sense when something was fundamentally wrong with the natural order. "Martinez," I managed, my voice coming out as a harsh whisper. "We need to evacuate this area. Now. What did you find?" I showed him the photograph. Martinez went pale, crossing himself instinctively. "Mother of God, Torres, what the hell are we dealing with?" Before I could answer, my radio erupted with panicked chatter. All units. We have civilians reporting a couple matching our Bolo description at Elkmont Historic District. They're offering assistance to lost hikers, trying to lead them toward the backcountry. Repeat, do not approach. These individuals are considered extremely dangerous. My stomach dropped like I'd stepped off a cliff. Elkmont was 8 miles from our current location, but somehow I knew the couple in the photograph was already there, already hunting for their next victim. "Martinez, you're with me. Everyone else maintain perimeter and keep civilians away from this area." The drive to Elkmont felt like traveling through a nightmare painted in autumn colors. The trees lining the road seemed wrong somehow, too tall, too dark, their branches reaching toward our vehicle like grasping fingers. The radio continued crackling with reports that made less sense with each transmission. Temperature drops of 20 degrees in localized areas. Electronic equipment failing without explanation. Hikers reporting voices calling their names from empty trails. And always reports of the helpful elderly couple appearing wherever lost souls might need assistance. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Michael Torres' situation? Comment below. We reached Elkmont as the sun began its descent toward the mountain ridges, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood red. The historic district, a collection of preserved cabins from the 1920s, usually attracted tourists interested in Appalachian history. Today, it felt like a graveyard. Our boots crunched on fallen leaves as we approached the main cabin where the couple had last been spotted. The silence was absolute. No bird calls, no insect sounds, no wind through the trees. Even our radio chatter had faded to static. "Torres," Martinez whispered, pointing toward the cabin's front porch. Fresh footprints led to the front door. 2 sets of adult prints, one larger and one smaller, walking side by side. But between them, a third set of prints simply appeared. No approach path, no origin point. as if someone had materialized in mid-stride. Emma's prints. My breathing became rapid and shallow as we followed the trail. The footprints led directly to the cabin door, which stood slightly ajar. From inside came the soft murmur of voices, an elderly man and woman speaking in soothing grandparental tones. "Come now, dear." The woman's voice drifted out. "You must be so tired. Why don't you lie down and rest? We'll take such good care of you." A younger voice responded, weak, confused, drugged-sounding. I need to get back. My family will be worried." Emma Thompson. Alive. I drew my service weapon, a Glock 22 that suddenly felt inadequate against whatever we were facing. Martinez flanked left while I approached the door. Standard protocol dictated calling for backup, establishing perimeters, negotiating from a position of safety. But Emma was in there, and every instinct screamed that time was running out. I pushed the door open with my boot. The interior of the cabin defied architectural possibility. What should have been a single-room historic structure stretched back into shadows that seemed to swallow our flashlight beams. Candles flickered on surfaces that shouldn't exist, casting dancing shadows that moved independently of their flames. In the center of the impossible space, Emma Thompson sat at a wooden table across from the couple from the photograph. Up close, they looked exactly like someone's beloved grandparents. Silver hair, cardigan sweaters, gentle smiles. But their eyes remained pools of absolute darkness, and around them, the air shimmered with heat distortion despite the cold. "Ah, Ranger Torres," the man said without turning around. "We've been expecting you." The sound of my name spoken by that thing wearing human skin sent ice-cold adrenaline shooting through my nervous system. My gun hand steadied even as sweat poured down my face. "Emma, step away from them slowly." She turned toward me with movements that looked like she was moving underwater. Her eyes were glazed, unfocused, but she was alive. "Ranger Torres? How did you... Where am I?" "You're in Elkmont, Emma. You've been missing for 18 hours. 18 hours? Confusion flickered across her face. "But I just met Harold and Martha a few minutes ago. They're helping me find the trail back to the parking area." The woman, Martha, smiled with too many teeth. Such a sweet girl, so trusting, so willing to accept help from strangers. "Let her go," I commanded, keeping my weapon trained on the center mass of the male entity. "Whatever you are, whatever you want, it ends here." Harold chuckled, a sound like wind through dead leaves. "Oh, Michael, may I call you Michael? You misunderstand completely. We're not holding dear Emma against her will. She chose to come with us, didn't you, sweetheart?" Emma nodded slowly, her movements still dreamlike. "They're helping me. They said they know a shortcut back to my car." "Emma, look at me," I said sharply. "These people aren't what they seem. You need to come with me right now." For a moment, clarity flickered in her eyes. She looked around the impossible cabin, registering for the first time that nothing about this place made sense. This isn't right. Where are we really?" Martha's grandmotherly mask slipped for just an instant, revealing something underneath that made my vision blur at the edges. "Now you've gone and confused the poor dear Ranger, and we were having such a lovely time." The temperature in the room plummeted. My breath came out in visible puffs as frost began forming on the cabin walls. The candle flames turned from yellow to blue to an impossible shade of black that hurt to look at. "Martinez, get Emma out of here, now." But when I glanced back, Martinez was gone. The doorway we'd entered through had vanished, replaced by solid log walls. We were trapped in an impossible space with entities that wore human faces like masks. Harold stood up from the table with movements that defied human joint limitations. His body unfolded rather than rose, stretching upward until his head nearly touched the ceiling that had been 8 feet high moments before. "You know, Michael," he said conversationally, "in all our years of offering assistance to lost souls, we've never had a ranger interrupt our hospitality. It's quite rude, really." Martha joined him, her own body shifting and stretching until she towered beside her companion. "Perhaps we should extend our invitation to include you. We do so enjoy having guests." Emma screamed, the sound cutting through my paralysis like a gunshot. She bolted toward where the door should have been, pounding against solid wood with fists that left bloody smears. I fired 3 rounds center mass into Harold's elongated torso. The bullets passed through him without effect, disappearing into shadows that swallowed light itself. He looked down at the holes in his cardigan with mild annoyance, like someone had spilled coffee on his shirt. "Really, Michael? Is that any way to treat your elders?" My radio crackled to life with static-filled emergency tones. Unit 47, respond immediately. Multiple missing persons reported in your sector. Hikers, campers, entire families. All last seen accepting help from elderly couple, matching your bolo description. The scope of their hunting became clear. This wasn't about Emma Thompson. She was just the latest in a collection that stretched back, who knew how long. These things had been stalking these mountains for years, maybe decades, presenting themselves as helpful Good Samaritans to anyone who found themselves lost and vulnerable. My service weapon clicked empty. 6 shots left in my backup magazine, 43 more rounds in my emergency kit. Enough ammunition to hold off human threats for hours, completely useless against whatever these things actually were. "Emma," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. "The windows. Try the windows." She spun toward the cabin's rear wall where moonlight streamed through glass panes that definitely hadn't been there moments before. But when she pressed her hands against the glass, it rippled like water, refusing to break. Martha laughed, the sound echoing from multiple directions simultaneously. "Oh, darling, there's nowhere to go. This is our home now, our special place where we can all get to know each other properly." The walls began closing in, not metaphorically, literally contracting, reducing the impossible interior space inch by inch. The flickering candles cast dancing shadows that reached toward us with finger-like tendrils. My phone had no signal, but GPS still showed our location, exactly where the Elkmont Historic District should be. But according to the elevation reading, we were 300 feet underground. "What do you want?" I demanded, backing toward Emma as the walls continued their inexorable approach. Harold tilted his head with bird-like curiosity. "Want? We want to help, Michael. That's what Good Samaritans do. We help lost souls find their way home." "And where is home?" Martha's black eyes sparkled with malevolent joy. "Why, with us, of course, forever and ever and ever." The walls stopped moving when the space had contracted to roughly 10 feet square. Emma pressed against my back, her breathing fast and panicked. I could feel her heartbeat through her jacket, trip hammer fast but still strong. Still alive. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked, playing for time while my mind raced through options. "Oh, time moves differently for us," Harold mused. "We helped a lovely family of settlers find their way home in 1823. A group of Cherokee hunters in 1794. Some Union soldiers who got separated from their unit during that unpleasant business in the 1860s. 200 years. They'd been hunting in these mountains for 2 centuries, appearing whenever someone needed help, leading their victims to this impossible space between reality and nightmare. My emergency pack felt heavier against my back, loaded with 23 years of accumulated survival gear. Standard equipment for search and rescue operations in the Smokies. Everything designed to help lost souls find their way home. An idea began forming. Desperate, probably suicidal, but the only option I could see. "Emma," I whispered, "when I say run, head for the darkest shadow you can find. Don't look back, don't hesitate. Trust me." She nodded against my shoulder. I pulled a magnesium flare from my emergency kit, praying that whatever rules governed this place would still respond to basic chemistry. "You know what I've learned in 23 years as a ranger?" I said loudly, masking the sound of the flare's activation. "The most dangerous thing in any mountain isn't the wildlife or the weather. It's getting lost." Harold and Martha moved closer, their elongated forms casting impossible shadows in the candlelight. "But the thing about being lost," I continued, "is that there's always a way home. You just have to be willing to make your own path." I activated the flare and hurled it directly at the cluster of black candles. The magnesium ignited with the intensity of a lightning strike, turning the impossible interior into a blazing white hell. Harold and Martha shrieked. Sounds like metal grinding against bone, like the last breath of dying stars. "Run!" Emma bolted toward the rear wall as the flare's chemical fire spread to everything combustible in the contracting space. But instead of normal flames, the fire burned with that same impossible black light, consuming shadows and revealing the true structure underneath. We weren't in a cabin. We were inside something organic, walls of flesh and bone, a stomach-like chamber designed to digest souls rather than food. The helpful grandparents' true forms writhed in the black fire, elongated limbs that ended in hooks rather than hands, faces that split open to reveal rows of teeth like broken glass. Emma's scream cut through the chaos as she found what might have been an exit, a sphincter-like opening in the organic wall that dilated as she approached. But as she reached for it, Martha's true form lashed out with appendages that moved like whips. I emptied my backup magazine into the creature's center mass. The bullets still passed through without effect, but the muzzle flashes created strobing light that seemed to cause them pain. "The light," I shouted to Emma. "They can't handle bright light." I triggered my emergency strobe beacon, the LED array flashing at maximum intensity. Harold's shriek intensified as he recoiled from the pulsing illumination. Emma dove through the dilating opening just as my flashlight batteries died. Darkness rushed back like a living thing, swallowing the magnesium flare's dying glow. The organic walls began contracting again, but now they moved with desperate hunger rather than patient confidence. I had maybe 30 seconds before the space compressed enough to crush me. My emergency pack contained one more option, a road flare. 20 minutes of steady red illumination, burning at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. I'd used them dozens of times to mark landing zones for medical helicopters. Tonight, I hoped they could mark an escape route from hell. I struck the flare against its cap and held it high. The red phosphorus burst into life, flooding the organic chamber with crimson light. Harold and Martha's true forms writhed away from the illumination, their substance seeming to evaporate wherever the light touched. "You cannot escape, Michael Torres," Martha's voice hissed from multiple directions. "This is our realm, our hunting ground. We have claimed hundreds of souls in these mountains, and yours will join them." "Maybe," I said, backing toward the opening Emma had used. "But I'm not going quietly." I plunged the burning flare directly into the organic wall. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The chamber convulsed like a wounded animal, walls spasming as the chemical fire spread through whatever nightmare biology had created this place. Harold and Martha's shrieks reached frequencies that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. The sphincter opening dilated fully, and I dove through just as the chamber collapsed behind me. I hit the forest floor hard, rolling through dead leaves and pine needles that felt wonderfully, impossibly real. Above me, stars shone through a canopy of oak and maple trees. My GPS unit showed normal elevation, normal coordinates. I was back in the real world. "Emma," I called out, my voice echoing through the normal, natural darkness of a Tennessee forest in autumn. "Here!" Her voice came from about 20 yards away. "Ranger Torres, what the hell just happened?" I found her sitting against a tree trunk, shaking, but alive. Her red jacket was torn and dirty, but she showed no signs of serious injury. "Are you hurt?" I asked, checking her pupils with my dying flashlight. I don't think so. But those people, they weren't human, were they?" "No," I said simply. "They weren't." My radio crackled to life. Unit 47, please respond. We have your GPS signal at Elkmont. What's your status?" Unit 47 to base. Emma Thompson located and secure. Request immediate medical evaluation and evac. Copy that, 47. Medical team en route. Status of the suspects? I looked back toward where the impossible cabin should have been. Just empty forest, moonlight filtering through normal trees onto normal ground. Suspects no longer a threat. I radioed back. "Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror and comment your theory about what really happened to Emma Thompson. I read every single one." Epilogue. 3 weeks later, I submitted my final report on the Emma Thompson case. Official version: lost hiker located after extensive search operation. No mention of impossible cabins, soul-eating entities, or elderly couples with black eyes. Some truths are too dangerous for official records. Emma recovered fully, though she still suffers nightmares about helpful grandparents who offer assistance to lost travelers. She's become an advocate for hiker safety, warning people to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. As for me, I still patrol these mountains, still respond to missing person reports, still carry that road flare in my emergency pack, because I know they're still out there. The things that hunt in the spaces between reality and nightmare, wearing friendly faces and offering help to anyone foolish enough to trust strangers in the wilderness. The false Good Samaritans of Smoky Mountain. And someday, when another desperate soul finds themselves lost in these ancient hills, those helpful grandparents will appear again with their warm smiles and their black eyes. That's when my radio will crackle to life with another impossible report. Multiple witnesses seeing the same person in different locations at the same time, and I'll know it's starting again. But next time, I'll be ready. My name is Michael Torres, and sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do in the wilderness is accept help from strangers. My name is Ryan Blackwood, and I should have forgotten the case of Alex Parker months ago. But something brought me back to that cursed section of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It was October 15th, 2018, and the case had been officially closed for 3 months. 3 months since we'd called off the search. 3 months since I'd had to look Alex's parents in the eye and tell them we'd done everything we could. But last Tuesday, a hiker found Alex's wallet. Not just anywhere, sitting perfectly centered on a granite boulder at the old Cataract Falls overlook, a spot we'd searched 17 times during the initial investigation. The wallet was bone dry despite the autumn rains, and every credit card, every photo, every piece of identification was exactly where it should be. Even the $43 in cash. What wasn't there was Alex's iPhone, the phone that had sent one final text message at 11:47 p.m. on July 18th. Found something incredible. Old cabin with vintage poker table. Going to explore. That message had led us to a week-long search covering 40 square miles of backcountry. We'd found no cabin, no poker table, no Alex Parker. Now, walking the same trail with my GPS unit showing coordinates 35.6307 to grain N, 83.5245 to grain W, my shoulders climbed toward my ears without permission. The October air carried the scent of decomposing leaves and something else, something that reminded me of old cigarettes and stale whiskey, even though the nearest bar was 30 miles away. My radio crackled to life. Unit 47, this is base. What's your status? I pressed the transmit button, watching my breath form small clouds in the unexpected chill. Base, this is Blackwood. Approaching grid section Charlie 7. Weather's dropping faster than forecast. Copy that, Ryan. Remember, this is just a follow-up sweep. Don't feel like you have to... I know what this is. The words came out sharper than intended. My mandibula travucum forsa, teeth grinding together. 3 months ago, I'd promised Alex's mother I'd bring her child home. That promise weighed heavier than my 40-pound pack. I clicked off the radio and checked my phone. 2 bars, battery at 78%. A text from my wife Sarah waited. Emma's soccer game is at 4. You promised you'd be there. My 8-year-old daughter, the same age Alex had been when their family first started camping in these mountains 15 years ago. The same age as the kid in the photo Alex's parents had shown me, gap-toothed smile, holding a rainbow trout by Abrams Creek. Suor frio escorreu pelo pescoço despite the dropping temperature. I typed back, won't miss it, love you both. The trail forked ahead. Left led to the main search area where we'd concentrated our efforts. Right led toward the old logging roads from the 1940s, roads that weren't on any modern map, but showed up in the park's historical archives. Roads we'd dismissed as irrelevant because Alex's GPS tracking had never shown movement in that direction. But Alex's wallet had been found on the left trail, pointing toward the right. I paused, studying both paths. Training said to follow protocol, stick to the planned route, radio in my position every 30 minutes. But something else, call it instinct or desperation, pulled me toward those forgotten logging roads. My hiking boots crunched on frost-brittle leaves as I chose the right path. 20 minutes later, the temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. My breath came in steady puffs and the October sun seemed dimmer despite clear skies. The trail here was barely visible, overgrown with rhododendron and mountain laurel that scratched at my uniform sleeves. That's when I saw the first playing card, a red ace of hearts face up on a moss-covered log. The card looked impossibly pristine for something left in the wilderness, its edges sharp and clean. I photographed it with my phone, noted the GPS coordinates, and bagged it as evidence. 50 yards further, another card, black ace of spades, placed deliberately on a granite outcropping. My pensamientos ficaron fragmentados como estática de rádio. This wasn't random. Someone, or something, was leaving a trail. But who? And why? The third card, ace of clubs, sat balanced on a tree branch at eye level. As I reached for it, my dedos ficaram dormentes, no obedecendo commandos. The cold was getting worse, but this felt different, unnatural. That's when I heard it, shuffling, faint but unmistakable. Cards being shuffled with practiced rhythm. I followed the sound deeper into the woods, my vision periférica desaparecendo como si olhase através de tubo. The shuffling grew louder, accompanied now by something else. A voice, humming an old jazz standard I couldn't quite place. Through a break in the rhododendron, I saw it. A cabin. Not the rustic mountain cabin you'd expect in these woods, but something that belonged in a 1940s Hollywood movie. White clapboard siding, green shutters, smoke rising from a stone chimney. Warm yellow light spilled from windows that should have been dark and abandoned. My respiração ficou superficial e rápida, como se não conseguisse puxar ar suficiente. We'd searched this area. I'd personally walked this exact grid with 3 other rangers and a K-9 unit. There had been no cabin. The humming stopped. Well, well, a voice called from inside. Smooth, pleasant, with the faint accent of old movie stars. Looks like someone finally found my little game. Come on in, Ranger Blackwood. I've been expecting you. He knew my name. Minha respiração saía em pequenas rajadas visíveis no ar que suddenly seemed arctic. I keyed my radio. Base, this is Unit 47. I've located a structure in grid Charlie 7 Delta, requesting backup for static, pure, white static. I checked my phone. No service. The cabin door opened with a welcoming creak. Warm air flowed out, carrying scents of pipe tobacco and aged whiskey. A man stepped onto the porch. Tall, elegant, wearing a perfectly pressed 3-piece suit that belonged in a 1940s nightclub. His hair was slicked back with pomade, and he held a deck of cards in manicured hands. Technology troubles? He smiled, revealing teeth too white and too sharp. Happens a lot around here. Something about the atmosphere. Please, come in. We have so much to discuss. Músculos das pernas tremeram como se fossem desligar. Every instinct screamed danger, but Alex Parker's face floated in my mind. That gap-toothed 8-year-old smile from the photograph. You know why I'm here, I said, hand dropping to my service weapon. The man laughed, a sound like expensive scotch being poured over ice. Oh, I certainly do. You're here about young Alex Parker. Lovely kid. Really had a head for cards. His smile widened impossibly. Had being the operative phrase. Where is Alex? Safe. For now. He shuffled the deck with fluid, hypnotic motions. But safety is relative in my establishment. You see, Ranger Blackwood, everyone who enters my domain must play. It's the only rule that matters. Suor gelado formosi instantaneamente testa. I'm not playing any games, I'm here to find Alex, yes, and you can, absolutely. Another shuffle, cards flowing like water between his fingers. All you have to do is win. The cabin door swung wider. revealing an interior that defied physics. The single-room structure somehow contained what looked like a 1940s casino. Green felt tables, brass fixtures, oil paintings of horses and hounds. And at the center, a poker table where a young person sat motionless back to us. Dark hair, medium build, wearing the same REI jacket Alex had been wearing when they disappeared. "Alex." I started toward the cabin. The man's voice stopped me cold. "The rules, Ranger Blackwood. Everyone plays, no exceptions, and the stakes." His grin revealed more teeth than should fit in a human mouth. "Well, let's just say I'm very good at collecting what I'm owed." Minha mente começou a criar explicações racionais impossíveis para o impossível. Hallucination from altitude sickness, stress-induced psychotic break, carbon monoxide from an underground leak. Anything but accepting what stood before me. "One hand," the man continued, stepping aside with theatrical flourish. "Just one hand of 5-card draw. You win, you take Alex home to mommy and daddy. You lose." He shrugged elegantly. "Well, let's not worry about that. I'm sure a man with your family obligations, we wouldn't want to risk leaving little Emma without a father." Ice flooded my veins. He knew about Emma. "How do you know about your precious 8-year-old daughter? About her soccer game this afternoon? About the promise you made to Sarah this morning?" The shuffling stopped. "I know everything that matters, Ryan, including the fact that you're running out of time. The game begins at sunset, whether you're sitting at my table or not." Through the cabin windows, I could see Alex more clearly now, sitting perfectly still, hands folded on the green felt, staring straight ahead with eyes that reflected the lamplight like a doll's glass marbles. Meus joelhos ficaram instáveis, como se fossem dobrar. This wasn't happening. Couldn't be happening. But Alex's parents' faces swam in my memory. The hollow devastation when we'd called off the search. The desperate hope when I'd called about the wallet. I thought of Emma, probably already in her soccer uniform, checking the parking lot for my truck. I thought of Sarah, setting aside her usual skepticism about my hunches because she knew this case had been eating at me for months. What kind of game? The words scraped out of my throat like broken glass. The man's smile could have lit up Times Square. Now that's the spirit. Simple 5-card draw, nothing wild. But here's the beautiful part. We're not gambling with money or chips. We're gambling with time. Time? 24 hours of life for each hand. You win, you get your 24 hours back, plus 24 from my pot. You lose. He made a theatrical gesture of coins disappearing. Well, let's focus on winning, shall we? Biel subiu na garganta com gosto metálico. And if I refuse to play? Then at sunset, young Alex begins paying the price of their curiosity, and you get to drive home to Emma's soccer game, wondering every day for the rest of your life what you could have done differently. The afternoon sun hung lower now, painting long shadows through the trees. Maybe 2 hours until sunset, maybe less. I stepped into the impossible cabin. The interior was even more wrong than the outside. The walls displayed photographs from decades past. Men in suits and women in evening gowns, all gathered around gaming tables, all with the same glassy-eyed stare I'd seen on Alex. Some of the photos were clearly from the 1940s, but others looked more recent. Much more recent. "Welcome to my establishment," the man said, closing the door behind me with a soft click. "I am Vincent Carbone, though most folks just call me Vinny. I've been managing this place since 1943. 75 years. The math hit me like a physical blow. Don't look so worried, Ranger Blackwood. I'm quite the gracious host." He gestured to the poker table where Alex sat motionless. "Your friend here has been excellent company. Very polite. Hardly speaks a word." Up close, Alex looked exactly as they had in the missing person photos. 23 years old, athletic build, intelligent eyes. Except those eyes now stared at nothing, and Alex's breathing came in mechanical, perfectly timed intervals. "Alex?" I reached out to touch their shoulder. "I wouldn't," Vinny said casually. "House rules. No contact with existing players until their games are resolved. What did you do to them? Nothing they didn't agree to. Vinny pulled out a chair for me, its wood creaking like old bones. Alex found my little establishment 3 months ago, just like you did today. We played a few hands. They lost. Now they're working off their debt. Estômago revirou como se tivesse vida própria. Working how? Time, dear Ranger, time. Every lost hand costs 24 hours of their remaining life. Alex wagered quite enthusiastically at first. Very confident player. Unfortunately, confidence and skill are not synonymous. I wanted to grab Alex, shake them awake, drag them out of this impossible place. But something in Vinny's casual tone warned against sudden movements. How many hands did Alex lose? Vinny consulted a leather-bound ledger that definitely hadn't been on the table seconds before. Let me see. 17 hands over 3 sessions. That comes to... He made a show of calculating. 408 hours. Just over 17 days. The blood drained from my face. 17 days of life? Oh, they're not dead if that's what you're thinking. Simply, suspended. Experiencing those 17 days in a very compressed time frame. A few minutes of real time, but their consciousness lives through every second of those lost days. Rather ingenious, actually. They'll age normally, but exist in a sort of temporal bubble until their debt is paid. Minha visão se estreitou até apenas conseguir focar numa pequena área à frente. And if they can't pay? Vinny's smile turned apologetic. Well, eventually everyone runs out of time to wager. When that happens, they become part of the house. Permanent employees, you might say. He gestured to the walls, where I now noticed several photographs showed people in modern clothing. REI jackets, North Face gear, smartphones visible in some shots. Recent visitors, recent players, recent losses. But let's not dwell on unpleasant possibilities. Vinny continued, producing a fresh deck of cards from thin air. You're here to win Alex back, and I respect that. Family bonds, loyalty, all very admirable traits. Shall we begin? Meus músculos do pescoço enrijeceram como cabos de aço esticados. 2 hours until sunset. My radio dead. My phone showing no signal. Emma's soccer game starting in 3 hours, and Sarah would be checking the parking lot, wondering where Daddy was. But Alex sat there, trapped in some nightmare existence, paying for their curiosity with pieces of their life. I sat down at the poker table. Excellent. Vinny settled across from me, his movements fluid as smoke. Now before we begin, let me explain the house rules. 5-card draw, no wild cards, standard poker hand rankings. We each start with 24 hours. Winner takes all. Loser. He shrugged. Well, you understand. And if I win, Alex goes free? If you win this hand, yes. But Alex has accumulated quite a debt. 17 days, as I mentioned. You'd need to win enough to cover that debt before they can leave. Simple math that felt like a death sentence. Even if I won every hand, I'd need to play at least 18 hands to break even on Alex's debt. And every loss would put me deeper in the hole. There's another option, Vinny said, reading my expression. Double or nothing. We can wager larger amounts. Very dramatic. Very exciting. You could win Alex's freedom in just a few hands. Sor desceu pelas costas como gelo derretendo. Double or nothing meant risking larger chunks of life with each hand. Win, and I could save Alex quickly. Lose, and I could end up worse off than they were. What happens if I run out of time to wager? Vinny's smile never wavered. Then you join Alex in temporal suspension until you can work off your debt. Don't worry. Time passes much more slowly for house employees. A very efficient system. I thought of Emma, probably already asking Sarah where Daddy was. I thought of Sarah making excuses, checking her phone for texts that wouldn't come. I thought of Alex's parents, who'd been waiting 3 months for any news of their child. Deal the cards. Vinny's hands moved with supernatural grace. Cards flowing across the green felt like water. Ante up, Ranger Blackwood. 24 hours to start. The cards felt normal in my hands. Paper and ink. Nothing supernatural about them. But as I arranged my hand, temperatura corporal dispenco como si sangue virasi gelo. Pair of sevens, jack high. Not terrible, but not great. Vinny examined his cards with the practiced neutrality of a professional gambler. I'll take 2 cards. He discarded and drew with movements too smooth to be entirely human. I watched his eyes for tells, looking for any sign of weakness or strength. His expression remained perfectly neutral. Your draw, Ranger. I needed to improve the sevens. Discarded 3 cards, drew 3 new ones. 3 of hearts, queen of diamonds, 7 of clubs, 3 sevens. Adrenaline flooded my system, but I kept my expression neutral. 3 of a kind was a strong hand. Not unbeatable, but strong. Your bet, Ranger Blackwood. I had to be smart about this, conservative. I'll stay with 24 hours. How cautious? Vinny's smile suggested he knew something I didn't. I'll raise you to 48 hours. My mouth went dry. 48 hours of life riding on 3 sevens. But if I folded, I'd lose the 24 hours I'd already wagered. And Alex would remain trapped, paying for their debt minute by minute. I'll call. We laid down our cards. Vinny. Full house. Kings over 3s. My 3 sevens might as well have been tissue paper. Excellent hand, Ranger Blackwood, Vinny said, gathering the cards. 48 hours to the house. Shall we continue? Respiração ficou descompassada, esqueci como respirar normalmente. 48 hours of my life. Gone. Just like that. But Alex still sat motionless, trapped in their temporal prison. I could quit now, walk away with most of my life intact, drive to Emma's soccer game and pretend this never happened. Or I could keep playing. Deal again. For the next hour, we played hand after hand. I won some, small victories that felt like tiny reprieves. But Vinny won more. Much more. His luck seemed supernatural, which of course it was. By my count, I was down 6 days and change. 6 days of life that I'd never get back. You're learning, Vinny said, shuffling for another hand. Your poker face has improved considerably, but I'm afraid you're running low on time to wager. Perhaps we should discuss alternative arrangements. Through the cabin windows, the sun hung much lower now. Maybe an hour until sunset, maybe less. What kind of arrangements? Well, you have other valuable assets. His eyes glittered with predatory interest. Family, for instance. A lovely wife, a precious daughter. Their time could be borrowed to cover your wagers. Every muscle in my body tensed like a coiled spring ready to snap. You stay away from my family. Oh, I don't need to go anywhere, Ranger Blackwood. Time is fluid here. I can reach through the years, collect from the past, the future, wherever it's most convenient. He leaned forward conspiratorially. Sarah has a lovely 73 years remaining, give or take. Emma, of course, has much more. Children are so temporally wealthy. Rage flooded through me like molten metal. You son of a bitch. Now. No need for harsh language, I'm simply explaining your options. You can walk away now, accept your losses, and live a somewhat shorter but otherwise normal life. Or we can keep playing, with expanded stakes. I stared at Alex, still motionless at the table. 17 days of their life already sacrificed to this monster's games. If I walked away now, they'd remain trapped forever, slowly paying off a debt that could never be truly settled. But if I kept playing and lost, I could doom not just myself, but Sarah and Emma too. The rational choice was obvious. Cut my losses, save my family, let Alex's fate remain a mystery. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Alex's parents, the hollow devastation in their eyes when we'd called off the search, the desperate hope when I'd called about the wallet. I thought about Emma, 8 years old and gap-toothed, the same age Alex had been in that family photo. What if it were Emma trapped in this nightmare? What if some ranger somewhere had the chance to save her but walked away because it was too dangerous? Double or nothing, I said. Everything I owe against everything Alex owes. One hand, Vinny's eyebrows rose with genuine surprise. Now that's interesting. You're wagering approximately 6.5 days against Alex's 17 days. But if you lose, I lose everything. I know. And your family becomes accessible to cover future debts. The words tasted like ashes. I understand. Fascinating. Vinny shuffled the cards with renewed enthusiasm. Very well, Ranger Blackwood. One hand, double or nothing. Winner takes all. He dealt 5 cards to each of us. My hands trembled as I picked them up. Ace of hearts, ace of diamonds, king of spades, queen of clubs, jack of hearts, 1 pair, aces high. With the right draw, I could make a straight or 2 pair, but aces were already a decent hand. Your draw, I needed to be smart, conservative. The aces were solid. I discarded the king, queen, and jack, hoping to improve the pair. Drew 3 cards, ace of clubs, ace of spades, 2 of hearts, 4 aces. Adrenaline exploded through my system like lightning. 4 aces was nearly unbeatable. Only a straight flush could beat it, and the odds of that were astronomical. But I kept my expression neutral, even as every cell in my body screamed victory. I'll take 1 card, Vinny said casually. He discarded a single card and drew 1 replacement. His expression remained perfectly neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Just for a moment. Satisfaction. Minha respiração ficou presa na garganta. He'd improved his hand significantly. But 4 aces, what could beat 4 aces? Your bet, Ranger. This was it. Everything riding on one hand. Alex's freedom, my life, my family's safety. All in. Vinny smiled, revealing those 2 sharp teeth. How dramatic, I call. We laid down our cards simultaneously. My 4 aces hit the felt like thunder. Vinny's straight flush, 5 through 9 of hearts, landed like a death sentence. The cabin fell silent, except for my ragged breathing. 4 aces. 4 fucking aces, and he'd beaten them. I'm sorry, Ranger Blackwood, Vinny said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. That's approximately 23.5 days you owe the house, plus Alex's 17 days. 40 days, 6 hours, and 14 minutes to be precise. 40 days of life. Gone. However, Vinny continued, gathering the cards. As I mentioned, we have payment plans available. Your wife and daughter can help shoulder the burden. No. The word came out as a growl. You leave them alone. I'm afraid that's not how debts work, my friend. But don't worry, they'll hardly notice. A few years here, a few years there. Sarah might find herself feeling a bit more tired, a bit more forgetful. Emma might not grow quite as tall as she would have. Small prices for such a noble sacrifice. I started to stand, ready to fight, ready to die if necessary to keep this monster away from my family. That's when Alex moved. Just a slight turn of the head, but after hours of perfect stillness, it was like a gunshot. Their eyes, still glassy, still unfocused, found mine. Don't, Alex whispered, the first word they'd spoken since I'd arrived. Don't let him... The words trailed off, but I understood. Don't let him take your family like he took me. I sank back into my chair, defeat crushing down like a physical weight. What do you want? Nothing complicated, Vinny said. Simply accept your debt and I'll collect from your family as needed. Very reasonable terms, really. You'll hardly notice the difference. Staring at the cards scattered across the green felt, I felt something break inside me. Not just hope. Something deeper. Some fundamental belief that good people could win against evil if they just tried hard enough. Alex was trapped. I was trapped. And soon, Sarah and Emma would be trapped too. Unless, what if I had something else to wager? I said quietly. Vinny paused in his card gathering. Oh? Something more valuable than time. I'm listening. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a video from last weekend. Emma's birthday party, all her friends gathered around our kitchen table laughing and singing. Pure joy captured in digital format. Happiness, I said. Joy, love, All the good moments my family has ever shared. All the good moments they ever will share. Vinny's eyes widened with genuine interest. Now that is intriguing. Emotional resonance has tremendous value. But what would you be wagering it against? Everyone's freedom. Mine, Alex's, everyone in those photographs. Complete amnesty for all debts. And if you lose? I looked at the video again. Emma's gap-toothed smile as she blew out 9 candles. Sarah laughing as frosting ended up on her nose. The moment of perfect family happiness I'd captured just 6 days ago. If I lose, you get it all. Every moment of joy my family has ever experienced or ever will experience. They'll live full lives, but empty ones. Hollow. Going through the motions without ever feeling truly happy. Vinny leaned back, considering. That is substantial. The happiness of 3 people across multiple decades. Yes, I think that would more than cover everyone's debts. One hand, I said. Winner takes all. One hand, Vinny agreed. Your family's joy against everyone's freedom. He shuffled with hands that moved like liquid mercury. The cards seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight, as if infused with supernatural energy. But first, he said, pausing mid-shuffle, let me ensure you understand the stakes. If you lose, your family will never again experience true happiness. Oh, they'll smile, they'll laugh, they'll go through all the motions, but it will be hollow, performance without substance. They'll live their entire lives wondering why everything feels so empty. I thought of Emma's laugh, Sarah's smile when I came home from difficult shifts, the way they both lit up when I walked through the door. All of that, gone forever. But Alex sat motionless beside us, trapped in temporal suspension. And somewhere in those photographs on the walls were dozens of other people who'd made the same mistake Alex had. Curiosity seekers, hikers, campers, all trapped by Vinny's games. If I won, they all went free. If I lost, my family would live empty lives while I remained trapped forever. Deal the cards. Vinny's smile could have powered the eastern seaboard. With pleasure. 5 cards slid across the felt toward me. 5 cards that would determine whether my family ever felt joy again. I picked them up with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. 10 of clubs, Jack of clubs, Queen of clubs, King of clubs, 9 of hearts, 4 clubs in sequence, 1 card away from a straight flush. If I discarded the 9 of hearts and drew the ace of clubs, I'd have a royal flush, the best possible hand in poker. Unbeatable. But if I drew any other club, I'd have a regular flush. Still strong, but beatable. If I drew any other card entirely, I'd have nothing. Jack high. 1 chance in 13 of drawing the ace of clubs. 12 chances in 13 of ruining my family's happiness forever. Your draw, Ranger Blackwood. My hands shook as I separated the 9 of hearts from the other cards. Everything depended on the next 30 seconds. I thought of Emma, probably in the parking lot now looking for my truck. I thought of Sarah, making excuses to the other parents about why Daddy was late again. I thought of Alex trapped in a nightmare for 3 months. I thought of all the faces in those photographs, people who'd made the same mistake I was making now. 1 card, I said, discarding the 9. Vinny slid a single card across the table, face down. I stared at it for what felt like hours. Once I turned it over, everything would be decided. Either my family would live hollow, joyless lives, or everyone in this cursed place would go free. 52 cards in a deck, 13 of each suit. Only 1 card could save us all. I flipped it over. Ace of clubs, royal flush. Well, Vinny said after a long moment, staring at my cards. That is unexpected. The color had drained from his face, his supernatural composure finally cracking. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely worried. I believe that's game over, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Vinny nodded slowly. Indeed it is. A royal flush. Unbeatable. He stood from the table, straightening his vintage suit. Very well, Ranger Blackwood. You've won. All debts are cleared. All employees are free to go. Around us, the cabin began to change. The warm lamplight flickered and dimmed. The walls started to fade, becoming translucent, then transparent. Through them, I could see the real forest, the October woods I knew, without supernatural casinos or impossible architecture. Alex stirred, blinking rapidly as if waking from a deep sleep. What? Where am I? It's okay, I said, standing and putting a hand on their shoulder. You're safe now. We're going home. The photographs on the walls were moving now, the people in them stepping out of their frames. Dozens of people from different eras, all looking around in confusion as they found themselves suddenly free from Vinny's temporal prison. This isn't over, Vinny said, but his voice was fading along with the rest of his establishment. There are others like me, other games, other debts to be collected. Maybe, I replied, but not today. The cabin dissolved entirely, leaving us standing in a small clearing I'd walked past 100 times before. Normal October woods, no supernatural casinos or cursed gamblers. Just me, Alex, and about 30 very confused people from various time periods. My radio crackled to life. Unit 47, this is base. We've lost contact with you for the past 20 minutes. What's your status? 20 minutes. I'd been in that cabin for hours, but only 20 minutes had passed in the real world. Base, this is Blackwood. I found Alex Parker. Repeat, I have found the missing person, requesting immediate medical evacuation and significant backup. We have multiple people requiring assistance. Copy that, Ryan. Medical and backup en route. Good work. I looked at Alex, who was staring around the forest with dawning recognition. How long? They asked. 3 months, I said. But that doesn't matter now. What matters is, you're safe. As we waited for the rescue teams, I pulled out my phone. Full signal, battery still at decent levels. A text from Sarah. Running a few minutes late ourselves. Emma forgot her cleats. See you there. I typed back. On my way, love you both more than you know. Looking at that text, I felt something I couldn't quite describe. Pure, undiluted happiness. The kind of joy that comes from knowing your family is safe, that you'll be home for dinner, that some promises can still be kept. It was the sweetest feeling I'd ever experienced. And it was all mine. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Ryan's situation? Comment below. 3 weeks later, the official report listed Alex Parker as found disoriented but unharmed after being lost in the backcountry. The other 37 people were classified as multiple unrelated missing persons cases resolved. No mention was made of temporal suspension, cursed gamblers, or impossible cabins. The old logging roads from the 1940s were officially closed to public access. Alex Parker never went camping alone again. Ryan Blackwood never missed another one of Emma's soccer games. And sometimes, on clear October nights when the moon is dark, hikers in the Great Smoky Mountains report finding playing cards scattered along the trails, aces and face cards, pristine despite being left in the wilderness, as if someone, somewhere, is still shuffling a deck and waiting for the next game to begin. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Alex Parker. I read every single one.